Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
What was the biggest misconception that you had as a child? Underneath the floor of a building was just an endless void. I thought people who replaced floors were incredibly brave, so I always told my parents I wanted to replace floors. For a year or so I wanted to be a tax collector. I saw one in a Pink Panther cartoon and thought they were just people who knocked on your door and kept all the money you paid them. That people of other races just had different levels of being tanned. Found out in the mall that I was wrong. I lived in such a white area that I thought my mum, who is totally white British ethnically but has much darker features than my other mega pale family, was black. I thought having a job was just you picking a company you like. Waltz in, find an empty spot and start doing something. I had no concept of interviews, tests, and all the paperwork involved. I thought being fired from work meant that the fired person gets killed. Every time my mom would tell me and my sisters not to bother her or she could get fired from work, she partially worked from home. I assumed that her boss would come into her office and literally shoot her. I was so terrified that my mom would get in any trouble at work. My mom always told me that if I got lost or separated from her while out in public and couldn't find a police officer, I should seek out the nearest woman with children. Her reasoning was obviously that another mother would be a good kind of stranger to talk to. Much more likely to help and less likely to harm a lost child. My reasoning, however, was that if I somehow never found my own mom again, I could and would just go home with the woman and have new siblings to play with so I wouldn't get lonely. All that you needed to do to get pregnant was get married. I thought you had to be married and sleep in the same bed. Then if you both wanted a kid, then pregnancy would randomly happen at a later time. Unless you were infertile, then pregnancy just couldn't happen. Edit, been getting a lot of questions about how I could know about infertility without knowing how sex works. Quick answer is my mom was infertile and that knowledge was passed down to me early as it's the reason my parents adopted me. My adoption story was sort of a bedtime story for me when I was little. Child me just never thought to question how pregnancies happened. I thought a potluck was where everyone brought food to a party and put it all in one giant pot. Then you would scoop out a plateful and whatever you got was your luck. Edit, thank you for the award. My first one. If you missed an exit on the highway you would basically end up in a different state. Judging by the way people cut across 4 lanes of traffic rather than spend a few extra minutes turning around at the next exit, I feel like there are some adults that still think this is true. I would bury coins in my backyard so I could dig them up next year and be rich. Because buried treasure. I thought that if I tilted my head to one side for a picture, it made me look sexy. God knows what I thought sexy meant back then, but it was only something naughty girls did. So I would wait until right before the pic was taken, and then quickly tilt my head right as the shutter went off. For whatever reason I always thought limes were just unripe lemons. When I was in my early 20s I went to buy a lemon tree and was so confused to see they had lime and lemon trees. I feel like an idiot every time I think of it. Down syndrome was when you were really sad. I thought you could say something like, "Looks like you got a case of Down syndrome," to your crying friend. That would make for a funny sitcom episode. Kid walks up to his dad and goes, "What's Down syndrome?" The dad, not wanting to take the time to explain properly, goes, "It's when you're feeling really down." The kid goes to school the next day and sees someone crying in the corner and goes up to them and says, "Looks like you've got a bad case of Down syndrome," making the kid cry even harder. My parents weren't raised in the US, but they tried to make sure my siblings and I got the whole American experience, so they tried introducing us to Christmas and even sent us to Christian summer camps. For some reason, this caused a sort of confusion in my mind and I thought Santa was God, and I was never corrected because my parents didn't understand Christianity or Christmas. That there was absolutely no way I'd ever get to be as old as the adults in my life. For some reason it seemed more likely to me that I could become a dog than that I could age into even a 15-year-old. In the 70s, I was 8. I remember asking my mom if I would live to see the year 2000. She said I would. Though I didn't believe her. To a child, 25 years is a long time. Now 25 years seems like a blink of an eye. The moon is chasing us. Lol, I commented this somewhere yesterday too. When I was young I used to think the moon was chasing us when we were in the car, chasing in a positive way though. That adults were mature, responsible, and not afraid of anything. Also, that I was destined for greatness. That ship sailed decades ago. That mountains grew. 'Cause my dad said Table Mountain was just knee height when he was a boy. Though people hid inside ATMs and gave people the money. I thought this with stoplights. Little dudes inside would push buttons to change the light. My aunt convinced me for a full year that a place known as Wally World's Chapstick Emporium existed. A year later, I asked my mom if I could go to Wally World's Chapstick Emporium. She said, "What's that?" and I said my aunt told me about it. Come to find out, it was just Walmart. That not everyone has a sister. I was certain that everyone had a sister like me, and when I went to a friend's house to sleep over I was dumbfounded that his sister wasn't there. His parents ended up showing me a picture of some random kid and told me that was my friend's sister just to shut me up. That trees made wind. Trees would move and their movement makes the wind. I honestly love that I used to believe this. It's so innocent. Also, that if you saw the clouds move it was actually the world spinning. As in the clouds would stay still. And world was turning. My ex-GF and her sister had hypothesized that male underwear have bigger stronger waistbands because it needs to be able to support the balls like bras holding boobs. I thought women were cold-blooded animals and men were warm-blooded. Because my mom was usually cold and my dad usually warm. There's actually a small amount of truth to that. Because men tend to have more upper body strength as well as fat. They produce more body heat whereas women do not. This is based purely on circumstance. Does not always apply, and the difference is not always noticeable. But the grain of truth remains. I thought that men had 2 separate sacs for their testicles. When I gave my first hand job I thought my BF had an accident and then had them sewn together. Personally I blame all the pen as graffiti shot led me to believe that's what they looked like. I thought adults couldn't run because I've never saw my parents running. Those concrete walls on highways mean we are getting close to your destination. My parents said, "See those walls? It means we are getting close." Because there were some near where we lived and a misconception was born. In the song that goes, "I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus," I straight up thought that the kid caught the mom cheating on their dad lol. I thought drinking and driving meant having any beverage in a vehicle. Had no clue about alcohol. In kindergarten I reported my mom for drinking and driving in the middle of a school assembly and they called her in for a meeting. Everyone thought it was hilarious but no one corrected me or taught me what it really meant, and I think it was like 6th or 7th grade before it all clicked. I just never knew raisins came from grapes. Found out age 18 and my mom was like, "I'm sure I told you." But my sister also didn't know, so it's debatable. One of my female friends from high school was convinced that a penis writhes around like a water hose upon ejaculation. I used to think that all child actors were dwarfs because kids can't act. I thought a male could only give 2 kids as they have 2 testicles. And that in the process of impregnating a woman, the testicles would explode. The older you get, the more fingers you will grow. Also women lay an egg each month. But it can take them by surprise. So restaurants have paper bags for women to store their egg in. I honestly believed that if I sat close to the drain in the bathtub while letting the water out, then I would be sucked out with the water. I thought all my friends' families were also rich and mine was so poor. Turns out my parents just decided to not go into a shitload of debt. My family wasn't rich by any means, we were solidly blue-collar middle class, but my parents were smart with their finances. I didn't realize that when you check a bag at the airport it actually goes on the plane. I just saw it go off on a conveyor belt and then appear at the destination on a conveyor belt. I thought there were just really long conveyor belts underground between cities for luggage transportation. I thought you got a girl pregnant by peeing inside of her until I was like 12. I was talking with an older friend and somehow we started talking about sex. And because I wanted to sound like I knew what I was talking about, I said something about peeing in her to get her pregnant. He looks at me dumbfounded and says, "That's not how it works at all. That there is an age where you will figure it out. There is nothing to figure out. Just do what you love. Grow to be a better person. Don't be a dick. And wash your hands." Cute one, I thought bunnies and rabbits were different. I thought bunnies were only white. And rabbits were all the other colors. Dumb one, when I learned about gay sex between men existing, I assumed it was done by one penis stretching out from the pee hole to accept the other penis. In my defense, I had only just grasped the concept of needing to stick a penis somewhere for it to be sex. So that's the first hole I thought of. Edit, yes. When I saw that office scene where Dwight thought something similar, I laughed really fucking hard and immediately told my dad, who was the person who corrected me, and we had a good laugh about it. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.